guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be chatting through some summer reading recommendations, but before we dive into the books themselves, first a word from this video's sponsor, which is Karma. That's right, I'm so excited to be working with Karma again, previously known as Shop Tagger, but they recently changed their name to represent all the good karma they bring you when you're doing your online shopping. Karma essentially uses their clever online technology to ensure that you never miss a price drop or coupon code when shopping online. I've personally been using Karma for months now, and I've not only been able to save so much money, but I've also been able to stay very organized with all my online shopping. Specifically, I recently picked up The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwen, which I was able to snag at 18% off when I pre-ordered this, one of my most anticipated books of the year, so I was happy to get it for a good price. But if you haven't already, I will leave a link down below to download the Karma Chrome extension. But if you're not familiar, it's super easy to download the Karma extension directly from the Google Chrome store on your Chrome browser, and then from there you're able to track your desired items across all of your favorite stores, so when they inevitably go on sale you can get them for a better price, and Karma lets you know via a push notification or an email to make sure you don't miss out when that price change happens. Another favorite aspect of the extension is the wish list feature. I personally enjoy it as it allows me to organize all of my saved products into different categories. I have a clothing section, a home section, as well as a miscellaneous section. I personally like to track things seasonally. I'm currently also tracking all of my upcoming summer book releases to make sure I can get them at the best price as they release. Not to mention, I feel like the wishlist setting allows me to be a bit more intentional and also cut back on some of my impulse buying. Karma extension also uses its clever technology to scan the web for coupon codes, and with a click of a button, it always ensures you get the best price at checkout. On top of that, they also have a cashback program via PayPal with a bunch of different retailers to also save additional money while shopping online. Again, big shout out to Karma for working with me for this video. I will have a link down below to download the Chrome extension, but without further ado, let's dive into the summer reading recommendations. Alrighty, so for the summer reading recommendations, I kind of pulled a bunch of books from a variety of different genres. I feel like depending on what you're doing, where you're going, what your vibe is, I personally feel like my reading is all over the place during these summer months, just depending on my personal mood, so I wanted to make sure there was something out there for everyone. Starting first with two shorter novels I think would be perfect to read while traveling. The first is Never Let Me Go by Kazu Ishiguro. This is a book I read recently, and wow, oh wow, did it leave an impact. This book is under 300 pages, but I promise it will sit with you for a long time to come. I also recommend if you do bring this on a trip, maybe pack some tissues. But this is a speculative fiction novel that I personally feel like knowing as little as possible going into it is the best experience. In this story, we follow our main character and narrator Kathy, and she's essentially recounting growing up in a secluded boarding house in the English countryside. You follow Kathy and her friends essentially as they're growing up. You see their friendship, you follow them as they're attending classes. This is a true coming of age story, kind of surrounded with innocence. In so many ways, it's beautiful. It's also incredibly brutal. Throughout this entire tale, you kind of immediately get the sense that something is slightly off. So much is familiar. You're following these young people as they're coming into themselves. Structurally, the story is told in a very disjointed fashion, and you slowly begin to see hints that something feels slightly sinister lurking behind the scenes. And as you begin to learn more about Kathy's life and the life of her friends, you begin to see a much more harrowing reality that is surrounding them. This is truly an impactful story. Again, I wouldn't pick this book up lightly. It is very emotional, but it's wonderfully written. It's absolutely captivating. And in my opinion, quite the page turner, as it does have a thriller-esque quality to it, even though I wouldn't necessarily classify this as a thriller. I loved this book. I read it very, very quickly, and I think it would be a perfect book to read this summer, especially if you're looking for something with a bit of an emotional impact. Another excellent book I think to pick up if you're traveling is Daisy Jones and the Six. I selected this book for a variety of reasons. One, I do feel like it's not super long, and structurally how it's written in a interview style, it reads super quickly as well. But I also feel like it's perfect for traveling because the audiobook is excellent. So if you're going on a long road trip this summer, this is definitely one I would recommend checking out. If you're not familiar, Daisy Jones and the Six is basically a fictionalized account of a very famous rock band from the 70s. Essentially, I would say they're supposed to be comparable to a Fleetwood Mac. They wrote this very famous album. They went on this cross-country tour. They were the it band of the 70s, and they famously fell apart and no one really knew why. And structurally, how this book is written is each member of the band is interviewed in present day, kind of reflecting back to this time period, explaining what happened, their process as a band, all of the drama that happened between all of the members, and also why inevitably they fell fall apart. Central to this is a character named Daisy, who is this beautiful California girl that everyone was sort of obsessed with at the time, and there was a very central conflict between her and the lead singer of the Six, which is a band that came together. It has a really riveting plot, and the overall 70s rock and roll vibe to this as well is really entertaining. Again, I would highly recommend listening to the audiobook of this, as it is a full cast and it really makes you feel like you're listening to a documentary. So much of this book felt so real, even though everything is completely made up. But yeah, this was great. I also just feel like summer, rock and roll, like what more could you want? Next two books I'm recommending are if you are in the mood for some romance. The first is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This is a book I read earlier this year and it was so cute. To me, this is the perfect beach read. It's light, it's quick, it'll put a smile on your face, and it's also a bit steamy and very entertaining. But this essentially follows our main character, Stella Lane. She is a genius when it comes to algorithms and she's paid well for it in Silicon Valley. And while Stella is very successful and fulfilled professionally, due to her busy work schedule as well as her autism, she doesn't really make a lot of time for social engagements. Therefore, she feels like she's very behind the curve when it comes to dating for her 31 years of age, so she decides to do the only logical thing, and that is to hire an escort to catch her up, teach her all the things she needs to go so she can jump back into the dating field ready and prepared. And so enters our love interest, Michael, with looks to kill. These two characters come crashing into each other's life, and honestly, a lot of hilarity and hijinks pursue from there. This book is so sweet. There's just so much mutual pining. There's also not a lot of conflict. It's really about two people learning to be vulnerable with one another and like allowing someone to love their perceived flaws. It's adorable. Again, it's very steamy, and it's just truly a rom-com good time. So if you're looking for something kind of easy reading, I would definitely check this out. Maybe perhaps a good palate cleanser after reading Never Let Me Go, but this was a lot of fun and I personally really enjoyed it. The next romance selection is a historical romance selection, and that is Dangerous Alliance, an ostentatious romance. And this book is honestly so much fun. It basically follows our main character Vicky, who at the beginning of the story sort of has it made. Her older sister is happily married, and now she can kind of focus on living and working on her family estate, which is her dream. However, it turns out her new sister's husband is absolutely terrible, and to save her family estate and farm, she now has to get married quickly. So she turns to the only logical source material, and that is Jane Austen novels. This is truly a book for a Jane Austen lover. As you can imagine, given that our main character is using Jane Austen stories as an inspiration to try to trap a husband, this book is full of a lot of dramatic twists and turns. It has family drama, but of course has a wonderful rogue to root for as well. This is just a lot of fun, to be honest. It's a fast read, and if you love Jane Austen stories or even just historical romance, I would really recommend checking this out. It's fluffy, it's fun, and I guarantee it'll be a good time. Next up is an option if you're looking for a more dramatic historical fiction offering, and that is The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is a book I feel like I have to pull off my shelf every year or so because it's personally one of my favorite books of all time, and it's honestly, in my opinion, just a beautiful masterpiece. And this is set in Barcelona in 1945, and it basically follows as our main character Daniel is taken to this forgotten secret library as a child. There he pulls off a book called The Shadow of the Wind. He reads it, he loves it, he falls in love with the story and the authors. But as Daniel grows up, not only are people really interested in his find, but he himself would like to read more books by this author. But when he begins to look into it, he realizes that someone is systematically destroying all other copies of this author's work, which kind of throws him into the center of this mystery, trying to figure out what's going on with this author, why are people destroying it, and basically this literary curiosity turns into a race to discover the truth. Again, this book is beautifully written, full of so much atmosphere. It has a wonderfully crafted historical Spanish setting, and in general, this is a book for book lovers, in my opinion, full of secret libraries, secret organizations, and missing masterpieces, and it was just utterly delightful. I personally want to reread this soon and actually continue on with the other books within this series, I want to say, but The Shadow of the Wind is an absolute page turner, and you should read it if you haven't already. The last two books I'm going to recommend are, of course, fantasy, specifically if you're interested in starting a new series. So the first book I'm I'm going to feature is The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. You thought I wasn't going to try to sneak Robin Hobb in this video? You were wrong. In my opinion, the summertime is a perfect time to start this wonderful, painful, incredible journey, because not only do you have the Farseer trilogy to consume, but you have a bunch of other trilogies after this that you can marathon throughout the summer, fall, winter 2022 months. It's a great time, and you can join me, basically. But of course, the Farseer trilogy is the first trilogy within Robin Hobb's world, and it's just the start of a magical, painful adventure following our main character, Fitz. And essentially, through the first trilogy, you're basically following Fitz as he's growing up. He is the illegitimate son of the previous king, and due to this reality, is kind of put in a precarious situation where he's not quite common, but he's definitely not royal either. So therefore, he's basically trained to be a tool of the throne and taught a variety of skills that will keep him useful behind the scenes. This first trilogy is truly Fitz's journey. Again, it is a coming of age story, it is a coming of pain story, and you're basically following Fitz on a variety of different quests, both discovering himself and also trying to save the kingdom that he's been raised to essentially die for. This is an incredible trilogy, and I promise from here there's even better books to consume. The Live Ship Trader trilogy, which comes right after this, is one of my favorite fantasy trilogies of all time. Robin Hobb's character work, in my opinion, is some of the best out there. She will make you feel so deeply for the characters that she introduces you to that I promise you'll be sucked into this fantasy world right away. So if you're looking for a new long fantasy series to check out, may I recommend Robin Hobb this summer. And perhaps if you're looking for a fantasy series with a few less books, I also have the Inheritance Trilogy to recommend by N.K. Jemisin, another one of my all-time favorite authors who in my opinion can write some of the most interesting and complex characters as well as some of the most interesting worlds. She also wrote one of my all-time favorite series, the Broken Earth Trilogy, but the Inheritance Trilogy I think is a really excellent place to start with her writing, not only because it has one of my favorite fantasy plot slash settings, which is a gods come to earth interacting with humanity sort of vibe, but also the books themselves are not that long. The entire trilogy actually lives in this bind-up. I would say they're each between 300 to 400 pages, but the first book within this trilogy is called The 100,000 Kingdoms, and it essentially opens with a girl traveling to the central capital of these 100,000 kingdoms. This capital has been able to maintain and hold power for a very long time because they have actually enslaved gods, and they're essentially able to use these gods' power to control all of the neighboring lands around them. And our main character Yina is actually traveling there because her grandfather, the ruler, has named her one of his heirs. This is not because he thinks she should actually rule, but instead he's essentially forcing her into a political game where he assumes she will actually be killed off by the other heirs to be. Once she arrives, she's thrown headfirst into the bloody politics of the capital city, and she quickly makes an alliance with the captured gods there. And from there, you essentially follow her try to fight and survive and possibly gain the throne for herself. This is very much the foundation book within this trilogy, and something I really enjoy is that each book actually centers and follows a different main character, and many years actually pass between each book, as I really feel like it gives a lot of space and time for the conflict itself to marinate, as the sort of god-human relationship is really, really complicated. Not to mention all of the different interactions between the surrounding lands and this capital city is very complicated as well. I love this trilogy. I read it from beginning to end very, very quickly. N.K. Jemisin's writing is astonishing. She is just one of the best fantasy writers out there in my opinion. But yes, if you're looking for a fantasy trilogy to marathon this summer, check out the Inheritance Trilogy. Alrighty guys, those are my summer reading recommendations. Let me know down below some books you think would be perfect summer reads, as I would love to know. Again, big shout out to this video sponsor, which is Karma. I will have a link to their Chrome extension to download in the description. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye!